Walter Greene was a man most people never noticed. An aging worker with a limp, worn hands, and a quiet way of carrying himself. He wasn't rich, he wasn't admired, and in the eyes of his cruel boss, he wasn't even worth the wage he earned. But what people didn't know was that Walter carried a heart big enough to shelter two lives that the world had already thrown away. It all began one bitter winter night, the kind of cold that sank through thin walls and left streets deserted. Walter had just finished another long shift at the steel factory, his back bent from years of heavy labor. As he turned the corner behind a diner, something made him stop. In the shadows of a narrow alley, huddled against a dumpster, were two children. A boy and his younger sister, their clothes torn, their faces pale, their bodies shaking from the cold. Walter could have kept walking the way everyone else did. He had little food at home, bills he could barely pay, and a boss who reminded him daily that he was a useless man. But as the children's hollow eyes lifted toward him, something in his chest refused to let him pass. He crouched, his knees aching, and whispered gently, "Do you have anywhere to go?" They only shook their heads. The boy held his sister tighter, as if to protect her from the whole world. Walter exhaled, the air fogging in front of him. He knew what it felt like to be discarded, to be invisible. He extended a rough, calloused hand and said quietly, "Not tonight. Come on." The girl's tiny fingers slipped into his palm, icy but trusting. That was all it took. When Walter led them into his modest apartment, neighbors sneered from their doors. "That fool can't feed himself. Now he's dragging strays inside." But Walter ignored them. He spread blankets on his couch, warmed a little broth, and watched as the children devoured it like they hadn't eaten in days. That night, as they finally slept in warmth, Walter sat awake in the corner, rubbing his aching leg, knowing life would only get harder. But he also knew this. Those children would never sleep on frozen concrete again. Days turned into years. Walter became their protector, their teacher, their only family. The boy, Eli, discovered books and read aloud at night, his voice full of curiosity. Grace, the younger sister, spent her time sketching bright houses and warm families, as if she were drawing the future she dreamed of. Walter sacrificed everything for them. He gave them his meals, patched their clothes, and saved coins to buy shoes when theirs wore thin. At the factory, his boss, Mr. Harlan, made sure to remind him of his place. "Even those kids you picked up probably work faster than you, Greene," he would shout across the floor, drawing cruel laughter from the workers. Walter never answered back. He carried the insults silently, saving his voice for the children who needed to hear encouragement instead of bitterness. The world outside judged him too. People whispered, "A black man raising two white kids? They'll betray him one day." But Walter kept going. He taught Eli how to stand tall, how to fix a tire, how to shake a hand with pride. He taught Grace how to count coins, how to speak up when others tried to silence her. Sacrifice became his daily language of love. Years passed. Eli grew into a sharp young man who earned scholarships. Grace became a bold student unafraid to debate anyone who mocked her unusual family. Walter's body weakened, but his heart was stronger than ever. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe that maybe kindness wasn't wasted. Maybe it was planting seeds that would bloom in places he'd never lived to see. But Harlan, the boss who thrived on cruelty, had been watching too. The more Walter's children succeeded, the more bitter he became. To Harlan, Walter was a man who didn't deserve pride or dignity. So one autumn morning, he set a trap. Police stormed Walter's apartment, searching under cushions and in drawers until they discovered a bag of stolen company goods and cash. Walter froze. He had never seen it before. Within hours, he was in handcuffs, dragged through the factory gates as Harlan smirked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Guess kindness doesn't pay after all. The trial that followed was a nightmare. Witnesses men Harlan had bought claimed they had seen Walter stealing. The prosecution painted him as a bitter old man who had finally snapped. In the gallery, whispers spread. I knew he was too good to be true. Walter sat in silence. He wanted to fight back, but years of swallowing insults had taught him how to stay quiet. He thought of Eli and Grace, but the shame was too heavy. He didn't want them to see him like this. and then the judge prepared to deliver his sentence. A life behind bars. Walter lowered his head, believing Harlan had finally crushed him. That's when the courtroom doors opened. Two figures stepped inside. Not children anymore, but Eli and Grace, walking with confidence, eyes fixed on the man who had raised them. The crowd stirred. Harlan's smirk faltered. Walter's chest tightened. He hadn't wanted them here, but it was too late. They were here for him. Eli placed a stack of legal documents on the table. His voice was steady, his presence commanding. He introduced himself not as the boy Walter once rescued, but as Walter's defense attorney. Grace stood nearby, recorder in hand, her journalist pen ready to expose the truth. Piece by piece, Eli dismantled the prosecution's case. Witnesses faltered under his questioning, contradictions spilling out until their lies collapsed. Then Grace rose and presented her findings, proof of Harlan's years of corruption, wage theft, and harassment at the factory. The courtroom buzzed. Murmurs turned into gasps. Harlan's face turned red with rage. The judge leaned back, silence stretching through the room. Finally, he spoke. This case was built on lies. The charges are dismissed. The room erupted cheers from some, gasps from others. Harlan stormed out, his empire of cruelty cracking under the weight of truth. Eli placed a hand on Walter's trembling shoulder. Grace leaned close and whispered, "You don't have to carry it alone anymore." "Dad." That single word, "Dad," echoed louder than the gavel that freed him. The neighbors who once mocked fell silent. Reporters scribbled furiously, and Walter, weary but unbroken, lifted his head with pride. Decades earlier, he had lifted 2 abandoned children from the cold. Now, those same children had lifted him out of a cage. Because kindness never dies. It waits, it grows, and when the time is right, it comes back to save the one who first gave it